My fiancée accused me of cheating, and her family beat me up. Now they're begging for mercy, but I'm sending them to jail instead. I, 29M, never thought I'd be the one posting here, but I need to get this off my chest. 3 months ago, my life completely fell apart, and now I'm faced with a decision that's tearing me apart inside. My fiancée and I had been together for 4 years, and were planning our wedding for this summer. Everything seemed perfect. We had our venue booked, invitations sent, and we're deep into all the little details that go into planning a wedding. I thought we were solid. I really did. It all started when I noticed her becoming distant about 2 months before our planned wedding date. She started checking my phone when she thought I wasn't looking, asking weird questions about my schedule, and generally acting suspicious of me. I figured it was just wedding stress. Everyone had told us that planning a wedding can put strain on even the strongest relationships, so I tried to be understanding. One night, I came home late from work. I'd been pulling extra shifts to save up for our honeymoon, and found her sitting in the dark in our living room. The moment I walked in, she stood up and started screaming at me, asking who she was and how long I'd been sneaking around. I was completely blindsided. There was no she. I hadn't cheated or even thought about it. I tried to calm her down and understand where this was coming from, but she wouldn't listen. She threw her phone at me, showing me texts from an unknown number claiming to be a woman I was sleeping with. The texts included details about my schedule and even mentioned specific restaurants I'd been to recently for lunch meetings with clients. Before I could even process what was happening, she called her family. Within an hour, her father and 2 brothers showed up at our apartment. I tried to explain that I had no idea what was going on, that someone was clearly trying to mess with us, but they didn't want to hear it. Her father, a man I'd respected and gotten along with for years, punched me in the face without warning. Her brothers joined in, and before I knew it, I was on the ground being kicked repeatedly. My fiancée just watched. She didn't try to stop them. The look in her eyes, cold, hateful, that's what hurt most of all. I managed to get to my phone and threatened to call the police, which finally made them back off. They left, taking her with them, while I sat on our apartment floor, bloodied and in shock. I took pictures of my injuries before cleaning up, a split lip, bruised ribs, a black eye, and various cuts and bruises all over my body. The next day, I went to the hospital to get checked out and filed a police report. The officers took my statement but warned me that without witnesses, it would be my word against theirs. Still, they documented my injuries and said they'd follow up. I didn't hear from my fiancée for a week. In that time, I discovered she'd posted on social media about how I'd betrayed her and broken her heart. Mutual friends started taking sides, mostly hers, without even asking for my version of events. I lost people I thought were good friends overnight. When she finally called, it wasn't to apologize but to arrange to pick up her things. She came with her mother, who couldn't even look me in the eye, and took everything she'd ever given me or that reminded her of us. She left her engagement ring on the counter without a word. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into work, trying to make sense of what had happened. I kept wondering who would send those texts and why. Then it hit me. About a month before everything blew up, my fiancée had mentioned running into her ex at a coffee shop. She described the encounter as awkward but insignificant. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. I hired a private investigator. It cost me nearly all my savings, but I needed answers. Within 2 weeks, the PI came back with evidence that her ex had been following me, taking photos, and using a burner phone to send those texts to my fiancée. He'd been tracking my movements for weeks, gathering information to make the texts seem credible. The PI also found messages between them from before the incident, showing she'd been in contact with him more than that one coffee shop encounter. I took this evidence to the police, who agreed to investigate further. They found more. Her ex had an obsession with getting her back and had methodically planned to break us up. They arrested him for stalking and harassment. When the truth came out, the tables turned quickly. My fiancée called me crying, saying she'd made a terrible mistake. Her family reached out too, her father and brothers apologizing profusely, claiming they'd only been protecting their daughter/sister and had acted in the heat of the moment. But I couldn't forget the look in their eyes as they beat me, or how she stood by and watched. I couldn't forget how quickly they'd all believed the worst of me, despite 4 years together. I couldn't forget how alone I'd felt when everyone abandoned me without a second thought. The prosecutor told me I had a solid case for assault and battery against her father and brothers. With my medical records, photos, and police report, plus their own admissions and text messages apologizing for the attack, they could face serious jail time. Now they're begging me to drop the charges. My ex-fiancée calls daily, crying that I'd be destroying her family, that her father might lose his job, that her brothers might lose their college scholarships. Her mother even showed up at my workplace, causing a scene and pleading with me to forgive them. Friends who had abandoned me are suddenly reaching out, saying I should be the bigger person. Her family has offered to pay my medical bills and compensation for my pain and suffering. They're talking about reconciliation and healing, as if we can just go back to normal. But I don't want their money. I don't want reconciliation. What I want is justice. They assaulted me based on lies they were too quick to believe. They tried to ruin my reputation and didn't care about the damage they caused. And now that they're facing consequences, they want mercy. Yesterday, I met with the prosecutor and confirmed I want to press forward with charges. The trial date is set for next month. My ex-fiancée sent me a long message calling me vindictive and cruel, saying the real me is finally showing through. Her father called from a blocked number, alternating between apologies and vague threats about how this isn't over. Everyone keeps telling me that sending them to jail won't heal me, that forgiveness is the path to moving on. Maybe they're right. But every time I look in the mirror and see the small scar on my lip that will never fully heal, every time I remember how easily I was discarded, I know I can't just let this go. Am I wrong for wanting them to face legal consequences? Part of me feels guilty. I once loved these people and saw them as my future family. But another part of me thinks about what would have happened if I hadn't been able to reach my phone that night, or what might happen to someone else if they think they can get away with this kind of violence. The truth is out now, but it can't undo what's been done. And I don't think reconciliation is possible, not after everything. So instead, I'm choosing justice, even if it means being seen as the villain in their story. Update. Thank you all for the overwhelming support. I didn't expect so many responses. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, my ex-fiancée knew about the investigation into her ex before her family's apologies started. The police informed her when they arrested him. 2. No, I'm not interested in getting back together with her. That relationship is completely over. Even if I could forgive the accusation, I can't forgive her standing by during the assault or her behavior afterward. 3. Yes, I'm in therapy. It's helping, but these things take time. 4. For those asking about restraining orders, yes, I have one against her ex who sent the texts. I'm considering getting them against her family members as well, especially after the recent threats. 5. My injuries have mostly healed physically, though I still have occasional pain in my ribs when I exercise, and as I mentioned, a small but visible scar on my lip. The pretrial hearing is next week. My lawyer says with the evidence we have, they'll likely push for a plea deal to avoid trial. Her father and brothers might get reduced sentences if they plead guilty, but my lawyer believes they'll still face some jail time given the severity of the assault and the clear premeditation. Her mother reached out again yesterday through my sister, begging for a meeting. I declined. I'm done with explanations and negotiations. Whatever happens now is in the hands of the justice system. I've started rebuilding my life. I moved to a new apartment in a different part of town. I've reconnected with friends who stood by me and made some new ones. I'm focusing on my career and considering a fresh start in a new city after all this is over. The hardest part has been trusting people again. Every time someone new comes into my life, I wonder if they'll believe in me when it really matters or if they'll be quick to assume the worst. But I'm working on it, one day at a time. For now, I'm just trying to stay focused on the legal process and not let the constant messages from her family derail my progress. It's not about revenge, it's about accountability. Actions have consequences, and they made their choices. Now they have to live with them, just as I've had to live with the aftermath of their violence. Update 2. The case has been resolved. Her father and one brother took a plea deal, 12 months with 9 months suspended for her father and 6 months with 4 months suspended for the older brother. They'll serve their time on weekends and holidays. The younger brother got probation since he's a first-time offender and wasn't the primary aggressor. They're also required to complete anger management courses and community service. The judge issued a no-contact order for all of them, which is a relief. I won't have to worry about unexpected confrontations for at least the next 3 years. My ex-fiancée sent me a letter through her lawyer after the sentencing. She said she understands now why I couldn't forgive them and that she'll always regret not believing in me. Too little, too late. I'm moving to a different state next month. I've accepted a job offer that I'm excited about, and I'm looking forward to starting fresh somewhere no one knows this story. My therapist says running away isn't the answer, but I don't see it as running away, just turning the page to a new chapter. To everyone who supported me through this, thank you. Knowing I wasn't crazy for standing my ground helped more than you know. To anyone going through something similar, document everything, trust your instincts, and remember that you deserve justice, no matter who the perpetrators are or how sorry they claim to be afterward. Some wounds heal with time, but that doesn't mean we should pretend they were never inflicted. I'll carry these scars, visible and invisible, for the rest of my life. But I'll also carry the knowledge that I stood up for myself when it mattered most. That's all for now. I probably won't update again, as I'm trying to put this behind me. Take care of yourselves, And thank you again for being there when I needed support the most.